New Year's Eve was always a big deal for our group. It was the one night of the year we all made time for, no matter what. This year we decided to keep it simple. Instead of heading to some overcrowded bar, we gathered at Alex's place, a cozy apartment perfect for a laid-back celebration. There was food, laughter, and the kind of comfort that only comes from being around people you've known forever. The TV was on, of course, tuned to one of those big city countdowns. The sparkling skyline and energetic hosts gave the room a festive vibe. We weren't really paying attention to it at first. It was more like background noise while we played card games and shared stories about the past year. As the evening rolled on, the TV became the focal point. At 10 minutes to midnight, we turned off the lights for a more immersive experience. The flickering glow from the screen lit up our faces as we gathered on the couch, drinks in hand, ready to toast the new year. The first glitch happened at 2 minutes to midnight. The picture froze for a fraction of a second, long enough for us to notice. The hosts on the screen were mid-laugh, their faces caught in an eerie stillness. Then the broadcast stuttered and jumped back a few seconds, repeating their movements. "Guess they're having technical issues," Alex said with a shrug, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. The rest of us laughed it off, though it did feel a little strange. The broadcast continued, but something was off. The colors on the screen seemed slightly muted, and the voices of the hosts sounded distorted like they were speaking underwater. At 30 seconds to midnight, the camera cut to a sweeping shot of the crowd in the city square, cheering and waving, but their movements didn't look right. It was like watching old footage that had been sped up and slowed down at random intervals. The countdown timer in the corner of the screen seemed to flicker, resetting from 30 to 32, then back to 30. "Is it just me, or is this super weird?" Mia asked, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. "Probably just some bad feed," Lucas replied, though he didn't take his eyes off the screen. By the time the countdown hit 10 seconds, the festive music had warped into a low droning hum. The camera zoomed in on the crowd, but their faces were wrong. Blurred, almost melting together, as if someone had smeared paint across the screen. 10, 9, 8, the crowd chanted, their voices overlapping unnaturally. The glitching intensified. The screen flashed with what looked like static, but if you focused hard enough, you could make out faint shapes in the interference. Shadows, figures moving just beyond the edge of recognition. 7, 6, 5. The voices on the screen became deeper, slower, like a warped recording. Alex reached for the remote. "Maybe we should just turn this off." The screen went black. For a moment, we just stared at our reflections in the darkened TV. Then the broadcast resumed, but it wasn't the same. Instead of the city square, the screen showed a distorted version of Alex's living room. The furniture was identical, but the colors were washed out, and everything seemed slightly out of place. Then we saw us, or versions of us, on the screen. Our reflections were sitting in the same positions as we were in real life, but their faces were blank. No eyes, no mouths, just smooth skin where their features should have been. "What the?" Mia started, but her voice caught in her throat. The countdown resumed, starting at 10 again. This time, the voices weren't coming from the TV. They were coming from inside the room. Low, raspy whispers that seemed to echo from the walls. 10, 9, 8. Lucas jumped up. "This is some kind of prank, right? Alex, tell me this is a joke." "It's not me," Alex said, frantically pressing buttons on the remote. "I swear, it's not me." 7, 6, 5. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. The TV screen flickered, and for a split second I saw my own face staring back at me, except it wasn't my face. It was twisted, contorted in a silent scream, with wide, terrified eyes that seemed to be begging for help. 4, 3, "Turn it off," Mia shouted, clutching Alex's arm. "Turn it off now!" Alex yanked the power cord from the wall. The screen went black again, but the countdown didn't stop. 2, 1. The room fell silent, The only sound was our ragged breathing. For a moment, I thought it was over. Just a freak electrical issue or some bizarre glitch. Then the TV turned back on by itself. The screen was completely black, except for a single glowing number, 10. And the countdown started over. 10, 9, 8. This time, the whispers were accompanied by something else. Faint, distorted screams, like they were coming from far away. The shadows on the screen began to shift, taking on more distinct shapes. Faces appeared in the darkness. Our faces. But they weren't just images. They were moving, screaming, trying to claw their way out of the screen. 7, 6, 5. One by one, the distorted faces turned to look directly at us. Their mouths moved, forming silent words we couldn't hear. "What's happening?" Mia whimpered, tears streaming down her face. "This can't be real." I didn't have an answer. None of us did. All we could do was stare, frozen in place as the countdown continued. 4, 3. Suddenly the screen flashed, and the distorted version of Alex was gone. He was no longer sitting on the couch with us. "Alex?" I called, spinning around. The spot where he had been sitting was empty. His drink was still there, untouched, but he was gone. 2, Mia screamed, but the final whisper drowned out her voice. 1. The screen went black. The silence in the room was suffocating. Alex was gone. One moment, he was there, gripping the remote and frantically trying to shut everything off, and the next, he'd vanished as if he had never been there at all. "Alex!" Mia screamed again, her voice cracking. She bolted to her feet, searching the apartment, opening every door and calling his name. "He has to be here," Lucas said, his panic mounting. "He couldn't have just disappeared." But we all knew he wasn't in the apartment. It didn't make sense, but deep down, we knew he was just gone. The TV screen flickered again, and we all froze. This time, the distorted image of Alex appeared on the screen. He wasn't screaming like before. He was sitting in a dark, empty void, looking confused and scared. His mouth moved as though he was speaking, but no sound came through. He reached out toward the camera, or maybe toward us. "Alex?" Mia whispered, stepping closer to the screen. The moment her fingers touched the TV, Alex's face twisted into an expression of terror. His distorted figure was pulled backward into the darkness, and he vanished from the screen. The countdown resumed. 10, 9, 8. "No, not again," Mia cried, backing away from the TV. Lucas grabbed the remote and tried everything, changing the channel, turning the volume down, even smashing buttons at random. Nothing worked. The screen seemed to mock us, repeating the countdown with its warped whispers. 7, 6, 5. This time the screen showed Mia. Her face was pale, her expression blank, like she was in a trance. She wasn't moving, but her eyes darted wildly, filled with panic. "Mia, don't look!" I shouted, grabbing her arm to pull her back. But the moment I touched her, the TV let out an ear-piercing screech. The lights in the room flickered violently. Shadows danced along the walls, growing longer and darker with each passing second. "Mia, stay with us!" Lucas yelled, shaking her. But it was too late. Her body went rigid, her eyes rolled back, and she crumpled to the floor. "Mia!" I shouted, kneeling beside her. She wasn't unconscious, her chest rose and fell rapidly, but her eyes were locked on the screen, wide with terror. On the TV, a distorted version of Mia appeared. She looked just as terrified as Alex had been, but she wasn't screaming. She was crying, mouthing words we couldn't hear. 4, 3. "She's next," Lucas whispered, his face pale. "No, she's not," I snapped, shaking Mia, trying to break her out of whatever trance she was in. "Mia, come back. It's not real." Her body jerked violently, and for a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to her. But then, her image on the screen turned to look at me. I stumbled back as the distorted Mia on the TV gave a chilling, twisted smile before being yanked into the darkness. Mia's body went limp in my arms, and then she was gone. 2. No, Lucas muttered, backing away from the TV. No, no, no. He grabbed a chair and hurled it at the screen. The TV shattered, sparks flying as glass and plastic scattered across the room. For a moment, I thought it was over. The screen was destroyed. The countdown had to stop. But then, the whispers returned. 10, 9, 8. The broken TV flickered back to life. The shattered glass pieced itself together, the screen repairing itself in seconds. This can't be happening, Lucas said, his voice trembling. I felt the air in the room grow colder. My breath fogged in front of me as the countdown continued. 7, 6, 5. Lucas grabbed my arm. We have to get out of here, now. We ran for the door, but it wouldn't budge. The lock wasn't jammed. It was as if the door had fused to the frame. The countdown grew louder, the whispers filling my head. My vision blurred, and for a moment, I thought I saw figures standing in the corners of the room. 4, 3. Lucas pounded on the door, shouting for help, but no one could hear us. I turned back to the TV just in time to see Lucas's face appear on the screen. He was standing in the same spot as he was in reality, but his distorted image was frozen in a silent scream. 2! Lucas! I yelled, grabbing his arm. But it was no use. His body stiffened, and he was pulled backward, disappearing into thin air. 1. The room was silent again. I was alone. The TV flickered, and my own face appeared on the screen. My distorted reflection stared back at me, its expression blank. Then slowly it began to smile. I backed away, my heart racing. The countdown started over. 10, 9, 8. I realized then that it wasn't just happening to us. The TV was broadcasting live. Somewhere people were watching this countdown, watching me, just as we had watched the city square earlier that night. 7, 6, 5. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. The shadows in the room moved closer, reaching for me. 4, 3. My distorted reflection on the screen spoke for the first time. Join us. 2. The last thing I saw was my own face staring back at me, twisted in terror. 1. And then, everything went dark. They say the new year brings new beginnings, but for me, it brought something else entirely. If you're reading this, and you're planning to watch the countdown this year, I have one piece of advice. Don't. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button and subscribe for more eerie creepypastas. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.